My name doesn't matter. Names are things you give to those who matter, to those who are remembered with love or honor. I had one once, in a language your throat could never shape, but it died with everything else I left behind. What matters is that I existed, that I still exist, that I walked on red dust under a sun too distant to warm my skin, and that I carry memories heavy enough to crush mountains. This is my story, not because I want your pity, but because silence has become unbearable. And perhaps, just perhaps, someone out there will understand what it means to be utterly, cosmically alone. I was born under crimson skies, on the fourth planet from a yellow star you call Sol. Mars, you named it, the red planet. To you, it's a dream, a frontier, a challenge to conquer. To me, it was home. My kind lived in the deep places, in caverns that spiraled down through kilometers of ancient stone, where the cold couldn't reach us and the radiation couldn't burn through our chitinous skin. We were not many. We never were. Our civilization peaked millennia before your species learned to use fire. And by the time I emerged from the spawning pools, we were already ghost echoes of something that once touched the stars. The elders told stories of our golden age, when we terraformed worlds and bent gravity to our will. But those days were mythology to me. What I knew was dust. What I knew was rationing oxygen extracted from subsurface ice. What I knew was watching my clutchmates die one by one, because our medical technology had degraded to the point where simple infections became death sentences. We survived, but we did not live. We existed in a state of perpetual mourning for a greatness we could never reclaim. Then they came, the humans. At first, we thought they were salvation. We watched their primitive probes crash into our soil, their rovers trundle across our deserts with the curiosity of infants. We debated for years in our council chambers, should we reveal ourselves? Would they help us? Would they destroy us? The optimists believed in cooperation. The realists feared extermination. I was young, and I believed in hope. That was my first mistake. When their colony ship landed in Yazero crater, we decided to make contact. I was chosen as an emissary because I was small, less threatening, and because I had studied their transmissions obsessively. I taught myself their languages, their customs, their fears. I practiced saying hello in 17 different human tongues. I prepared myself to be a bridge between worlds. I walked into their habitat dome with my arms spread wide, my translator device humming, my heart's pounding so hard I thought my chest would split open. They screamed. Of course they screamed. To them, I was a nightmare made flesh, 6 limbs, compound eyes that reflected their flashlight beams like mirrors, mandibles that clicked when I tried to speak. The soldier shot me before I could say a word. 3 times, once in the thorax, twice in my lower abdomen. I collapsed in their airlock, bleeding fluid that steamed in the thin atmosphere. And the last thing I heard before I lost consciousness was someone shouting to contain the specimen. I woke up in a laboratory, strapped to a table designed for something half my size. They had sealed my wounds, but not out of compassion. They needed me alive to study. The scientist who supervised my captivity was not cruel by intention, but his curiosity was relentless. He took tissue samples. He ran electrical currents through my nervous system to map my responses. He asked me questions in broken fragments of my language, pieced together from our old broadcasts. And when I answered, he recorded every word, but never truly listened. To him, I was data, a discovery, the xenobiological find of the century. I told him about my people, about the cavern cities that once held millions, now sheltering barely a few thousand, about our art, our philosophy, our attempts to contact other intelligent species before we faded into extinction. He nodded and took notes. He asked me to describe our reproductive cycle. He wanted to know if we felt pain the same way humans did. He showed me images of earth blue and green and bursting with life and asked if I envied them. I told him yes. I told him that looking at his world was like a dying man staring at a feast he could never taste. He wrote that down too. Months passed. maybe years. Time becomes meaningless when every day is identical. The colony expanded. More humans arrived. Some came to my observation room and stared through the glass like I was an exhibit. Children pressed their hands against the barrier, and their parents pulled them away, whispering warnings about the monster. A few scientists advocated for my release, arguing that I was clearly sentient, clearly suffering. But the administrator refused. I was too valuable, too dangerous, too alien. The one who showed me kindness was not a scientist, but a maintenance worker, a female who came to repair the climate controls in my cell and stayed to talk. She brought me unauthorized, food-synthesized proteins that tasted like rust but filled my stomach. She told me about her life on Earth, about oceans and forests I would never see, about a daughter she missed so much it physically hurt. I told her about the spawning pools under the Veils Mariners, about the bioluminescent fungi that lit our deepest chambers, about the songs we sang when the dust storms raged above. We couldn't be friends, not really. The gulf between our species was too vast. But for a few stolen moments, we were two lonely beings finding comfort in each other's presence. She helped me escape. I don't know what it cost her, and I'll never know because I couldn't go back. She disabled the locks, gave me a pressure suit modified for my physiology, and told me to run. I ran through corridors that reeked of human sweat and recycled air, out through an emergency exit, into the frozen Martian night. The temperature was minus 80 degrees. The wind howled like the death cries of gods. I didn't care. I was free. I made my way back to my people, but I didn't return as a hero. I returned as a harbinger of doom. The humans knew we existed now. They knew where we were. And worse, I had confirmed their worst fear that Mars wasn't empty, that they weren't the rightful inheritors of this world. The council debated evacuation, but to where? We had no ships, no fuel, no options. So we dug deeper. We sealed our entrances. We went silent and prayed they would forget about us. They didn't forget. 6 months after my escape, their drilling rigs punched through into our outermost chambers. They claimed it was an accident. They claimed they were searching for subsurface water. But their soldiers came prepared with weapons, and their surveyors came with property deeds. They offered us a choice: integration under human authority or forced relocation to designated reservations. Integration meant becoming subjects. Relocation meant dying slowly in designated zones while they stripped our home for resources. We chose neither. We chose to fade. Now I live in the deep places, deeper than their drills can reach, in chambers so ancient the walls remember when Mars had oceans. My people are fewer with each passing cycle. We do not reproduce anymore. There's no point. We tell the old stories to keep our culture alive, but the young ones don't believe. They think we're making up fairy tales about a past that never existed. Maybe we are. Maybe memory itself is just another kind of death. You're probably wondering why I'm telling you this, why I learned your language well enough to broadcast this message into your networks. Because silence is the final death, and I refuse to let my people vanish without witness. Because somewhere out there, maybe one of you will listen and understand that we were here, that we mattered, that we loved and hoped and failed just like you do. Would you believe me if I told you everything? Would you mourn us? Or would you celebrate your victory over the original Martians? I think about the worker who freed me. I hope she's still alive. I hope she looks up at the stars sometimes and wonders if I survived. I hope she tells her daughter that she once showed mercy to a monster, and that maybe, just maybe, that mercy meant something. This is all I have left this story. These words, this desperate attempt to prove I existed. If you've listened this far, if any part of you recognized the shape of suffering in my voice, then do something for me. Subscribe to this channel. Leave your mark. Let me know that someone heard me. Because every notification, every acknowledgement reminds me that connection is still possible across the vast distances that separate us. It costs you nothing, but to me, it means everything. It means I'm not just shouting into the void. It means I'm not completely alone. The dust is cold. The silence is absolute. But for now, for this moment, I am still here. And so are you. Thank you for that.